Hi, my name is Boruch and I'm an alcoholic, and welcome back to my series of videos where I'm going through the 12 steps for each of the 5 books of the Old Testament. Today we're doing the 8th step based on inspiration from the book of Genesis. Today our reading is going to be from Genesis 28:12, which goes like this, and we're talking about Jacob. This is the he in this verse is Jacob. And he dreamt, and behold, a ladder was set earthwards, and its top reached heavenward, and behold, angels of God were ascending and descending on it. This is one of the most famous verses in the entire Bible. It's referring to the so-called Jacob's ladder. And what's happening here is that Jacob, who is the son of Isaac and Rebekah, the grandson of Abraham and Sarah, he is the 3rd generation of the patriarchs, the first people who recognized that there was one God and were monotheists. Jacob had a twin brother named Esau. Esau was a little bit older and was entitled to the blessing from Isaac. The blessing would confer upon him the leadership of the future to become the patriarch of the Judeo-Christian tradition. Jacob, based on prophecy from his mother, contrived to get the blessing for himself. This was last week's episode. Isaac gave Jacob the blessing instead of Esau. Esau became very angry about this and threatened to kill Jacob, so Jacob fled. So that's the backstory, as I used to say when I worked in television. That's the backstory to this moment. Jacob has fled. He's run for his life, and he's ended up, and where he is actually is, according to tradition, is he's not just anywhere when he lies down and goes to sleep. He's on the Temple Mount. He's at the place where the temple is going to be built in Jerusalem several centuries later. And he goes to sleep, and it's a sort of an odd thing. It's the middle of the day, but the sun goes down, which kind of suggests it's a miracle. He goes to sleep, and he has this dream. And in this dream, he sees a ladder going to heaven, and some angels going up the ladder, and some angels coming down the ladder. It's a very famous image. There's been paintings of it. It's a whole special moment in the Bible because the great figures in the Old Testament, when they have a dream, it's prophecy. It's God talking to them. And there's many interpretations of the dream, including that that some angels are coming down to help Jacob, and other angels have finished their mission of helping Jacob, and they're going back to heaven. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but I think from a recovery perspective, this idea of going up or down is very relevant, and the idea that you're going towards heaven or away from heaven is also relevant in recovery. There's a concept in recovery that you'll hear in the rooms or from your sponsor, which is, are you going towards recovery or away from recovery? Are you going towards conscious contact with God or away from conscious contact with God? The implication being, if you're going away from conscious contact from God and away from good sobriety, you are putting yourself at risk of trouble. Trouble, as mild trouble as just feeling bad, or even worse, relapsing or getting into self-destructive behavior. There tends to be a cycle, and it is kind of like going down a ladder. A ladder of negativity or a ladder of positivity. In a negative sense, you feel bad about yourself. You start hanging around with people you shouldn't be hanging around with. You start hanging around places you shouldn't be hanging out. And all of a sudden, you're drinking and using drugs again, or acting out in some bad way. Alternatively, if you're going in a positive direction towards heaven, towards conscious contact with God, so to speak, going up the ladder, you start going to more meetings, you're doing more step work, you're associating with sober people, you're doing more positive things, you're hanging out with people who are good for you, your life starts to improve. This is a constant theme in recovery, and if you've been in recovery, you will know what it feels like to go in both directions. It's inevitable that you're going to go in both directions. That's just a fact of recovery. And in terms of the 8th step, which is today's focus, the 8th step is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So actually, like some of the steps, it's actually a double step. There's 2 things you're supposed to do here. One is an action and one is a thought. making a list, that's an action. You got to sit down at pencil and paper, make a list, okay? And became willing to make amends to them all. That's a thought process. Both of these things are not simple, because I could give you a pencil paper. You could probably in 5 minutes come up with a short list of people you'd harmed. And maybe if I gave you another 5 minutes, you'd become willing to make amends to some of them. And you probably should do that. But the 8th step really asks us to be a little more thorough. Take some time, because I think this is one of the problems of the disease of addiction. It impairs our memory. And I think if we think harder, we'll come up with a longer list, and we'll start to realize that there might be a lot more people we'd harmed than we first thought. And then becoming willing to make amends to them all on a case-by-case basis as you go down your list, that may be a lot easier said than done. But it's a challenge. I think the 8th step is one of those things that you do it more than once. Most people who have good recovery are adding to their 8th step, which then becomes a 9th step. It's a process. It occurs to you, and I've had this like many, many years later, like, I really owe this person an amends. Like, it hadn't even occurred to me. But then when I thought again about what happened, if I can be honest with myself, which is not always easy, I'll say, I was drinking, or I was being a dry drunk, and I didn't treat this person right, and they deserve amends from me. So connecting it to the verse, the 8th step can be stressful. I would think about it. I'd try and put these two ideas together with the 8th step. Are you going up or down the ladder of spiritual growth suggested by Jacob's dream? If you have a person on your list, on your 8th step list, is making amends to them going to take you up the ladder or down the ladder? And both are possible. There are certain 8th step people where maybe you shouldn't talk to them for many, many reasons. This is something to go over with your sponsor. There are people who maybe if you approach them, you haven't seen them since you were drinking and using, maybe it will be bad for you to go to them. Or you would be harming them, which is also bad for you. So it's kind of an up and down. But there are some people where it's very clear, I need to make an amends to this person. And by making an amends to this person, I will be going up a step, so to speak. I'll be up the ladder towards conscious contact with God. The problem I have with this person is interfering with my conscious contact with God, is interfering with my recovery. If I can make amends to this person, I will go up the ladder. So my other thought for you for today is, if you've been down the ladder, and we all have, if we can be honest with ourselves, how have you gotten yourself back up? What did it take to get yourself back up the ladder? Was it going to meetings, talking to your sponsor, reaching out to people, being of service? There's many things you can do. Doing step work, reading the big book, reading your Bible, prayer, meditation. These are ways to go back up the ladder. For today, think about how will you seek conscious contact with your higher power to advance up the ladder? That's my challenge for you today. Can you go up the ladder, be in Jacob's dream, and be one of the people going up the ladder towards heaven? And because it's a YouTube video, I got to make my little plug. If you like what you hear, I'd encourage you to look at my book, the Old Testament 12-Step Workbook. That's where most of this material comes from. It's available to order in the link below. Love to work with you on this, and thank you for listening.